We've all heard about mail order brides, but have you heard the story about the king that found a wife sight unseen and then it turns out he sort of catfished himself? Yeah. Well, this is the story of King Henry VIII and his wife Anne. No, not Anne Boleyn. There was another Anne, you see, because he married 3 Catherines, 2 Annes, and a Jane. So this is wife number 4, Anne number 2. You with me so far? The year is 1537. Henry VIII has just lost his 3rd wife, Jane Seymour. She died right after giving birth to their son, Edward. And all of his advisors are saying, well, a king needs a queen, and you're going to need some more kids, because he's already basically disowned 2 of them, and the 3rd one is kind of sickly. So they're like, you got to get married, you got to have more kids. So he's got his ambassadors all over the globe just spreading the word. The king is single, the king is single, and he is ready to mingle. His right-hand man, Thomas Cromwell, decides, look, don't you worry, buddy. I'm going to find you the perfect bride. Now, the English envoy to Brussels gives a little jingle jingle, and he says, you know what? There's a girl you could be interested in. The Duke of Cleves has a daughter. And before you ask, Cleves is like what is now Germany. He actually put in his report that there is not great praise for either her personage or her beauty. Yeah, it's a hell of a recommendation. But he also says, you know what? What about the Duchess of Milan? This beautiful 16-year-old widow. Yes, you heard me right. She was only 16 years old, and she'd already been previously married to an old dude who kicked the bucket. So she's a 16-year-old widow. Her name is Christina, and she's gorgeous, which is exactly what King Henry wants, because he's a vain narcissist and he wants the most beautiful girl in all the land. And she better have a smoking bod and be able to make lots of babies. That's really all he requires. But then one of his advisors says, you know what? Maybe you ought to use this marriage to form an alliance, because, you know, everyone around the world totally hates him. So he decides, well, yeah, maybe I should marry a French woman. That way I'm allied with the French. So they picked this French noblewoman. Her name is Mary of Guise. She's a full-ass adult. She already has a couple of kids, and she's no dummy. She gets word that the king is interested in courting her, and she's like, I think the hell not. She pulls a runaway bride and sneaks off to marry somebody else before the king can even come and ask for her hand in marriage. Which brings us back to Christina, the Duchess of Milan, the gorgeous 16-year-old. And so Henry goes, yeah, okay, yeah, that would probably do. And so he sends a couple of ambassadors over there to meet with her and have a little chit chat. And she's like, oh, yeah, no, sorry, not it. I'm not interested at all. And they're like, what do you mean? He's the King of England and you're, you know, a 16-year-old widow. Why wouldn't you be interested? And she says, yeah, sorry, I'm not interested in a man who's already rid himself of 3 queens so quickly. In her mind, whether this be true or not, but in her mind, she actually believed that Catherine of Aragon was poisoned. She believes that Anne Boleyn was innocently put to death, which she was, and that Jane Seymour died due to ill care during childbirth. So Christina of Milan is like, no, I'll take my chances someplace else. Henry is left without a bride. They're having a hard time finding anybody who will say yes to him. And then suddenly his man Cromwell goes, didn't someone mention a German girl? That's Anne of Cleves. So they reach out to the Duke of Cleves, and the Duke of Cleves goes, I have 2 daughters. He's got Anne and Amelia. And he's so excited that anybody's even just like interested in talking to him that he says, take one, take both. I don't care. Take your pick. They're yours. That English envoy that had mentioned it before was talking about Anne. He had mentioned Anne, remember, the one that didn't have great personage or beauty, but that's beside the point. Cromwell goes, I think we want Anne, but let's send someone over to check them both out. So they send ambassadors over to Cleves. Now, unfortunately, this all takes so long that by the time they get there, the Duke of Cleves has kicked the bucket and his 22-year-old son, William, has taken over. And William is not so sure he wants to marry off either of his sisters. In fact, he thinks that the English court is vulgar and it's filled with debauchery. And he and his sisters have been raised with an incredible amount of modesty, and he's not so sure he wants to sign them up for that. In fact, when the 2 ambassadors get over there, they're like, we're supposed to just check out the girls. And basically, Henry gave them the instructions to pick the one that's the prettiest. So bring out the sisters for the ambassadors to check out, right? These guys are like, we're just going to pick the prettiest one and go tell the king, here you go, here's your bride. They bring out the 2 girls, and they are both covered from head to toe, like head to toe, in thick garments that completely cover them. All you see are these little eye holes. It's like Halloween when you throw a sheet over your head and you just like poke 2 holes and go as a ghost. Same thing. They can't see a thing. They cannot see what the girls look like. They cannot see what types of figures they have. Nothing. So then Cromwell says, well, no worries. We're going to send the painter over. Hans Holbein's going to come over and he's going to paint portraits of the girls and we'll bring them back for the king to view them. And then he'll pick which of the brides he would prefer. Well, William's like, no, yeah, I don't think I want your painter painting my sisters. In fact, if anybody's going to paint the portrait, it's going to be my painter. And it just so happens he's out sick. He's probably not going to be back for weeks and weeks and weeks. So this thing is dragging on. Now, meanwhile, Henry's getting more antsy. Cromwell is sort of lying to him. And Cromwell's like, we hear Anne, everybody who talks about Anne, that she's the one. She's smart and beautiful and she's the one you want. Cromwell even tells Hans Holbein, when you get there and you get a chance to paint her, it wouldn't hurt you to kind of paint her in kind of a flattering light. So Hans Holbein comes over. He's finally allowed to paint Anne of Cleves. And this is the painting that he made of Anne of Cleves. It is declared to be one of the most exquisite portrait miniatures ever painted. He also painted a full-size portrait of Anne of Cleves later on, and that one still hangs in the Louvre. It didn't get stolen. Now, Henry, the minute he sees that portrait, he falls madly in love with her. He's like, yep, this is my wife. I have to have her. He's head over heels. But Duke William is still like, I'm not sure. Because brother can't afford to pay the dowry. So they even say, you know what? Since this is who the king wants to marry, we'll forego the dowry. You don't have to pay anything. Probably easily millions in cash and gold and jewels and everything. They gave up all of that because Henry was so in love with that damn portrait. He is so overwhelmed with physical attractiveness to her that he says, she must be my bride. Get her here as soon as possible. Let's get married. So Anne leaves her home in Cleves and she is going to make the trek across land to Calais and then take a ship across the channel to England, and this is going to be several weeks. Once she leaves Cleves, she's attended by a bunch of horsemen and women of Cleves, right? All of her attendants escort her to Calais. Now, Henry is sending some of his advisors along the way to help escort them. Reports coming back on Anne, people are saying she's kind, she's funny. Henry doesn't seem to hear any of the conversation when people say, well, she doesn't speak English, she doesn't speak Spanish, she doesn't speak French, she doesn't speak Latin, she only speaks High Dutch. So there's definitely going to be a communication issue. She's trying desperately to speak English, but it's rough. She doesn't know music. She doesn't know fashion. She doesn't know dancing. She doesn't know instruments. So all of the things that would normally attract him are not there. I've run out of time. You got to come back because we're almost to the best part.